everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sword and Strategy Podcast. With the woo. Whoa, he did that woo before I could even get to who we are, which if you've been watching, thank you.
Yes.
For those who actually watch.
Actually, we've never said that. So yes,
we haven't.
Thank you
Yeah,
all
thank you
for the views.
Yes. So with you as always, I'm Paul, and with me is Josh, here to talk to you today about servant leadership, which is a very interesting subject. But before we even get to that, Josh, just want to make sure to remind those people that do watch or people that are checking out the channel for the first time. If you like what you see, like the video, subscribe, share, follow, whatever all the words
things
are.
And
all
you know
things.
what? If you don't like what you see, do all those things anyway, and then just don't watch anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. We'll
we
take
all
that
get notifications on our phone that we don't pay attention to. So just turn on your notifications and just swipe.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. That's fine. Yeah. That works. Also, Josh, I wanted to make sure and shout out our sponsor for this podcast, Stone Table Advisory Group.
Who's that?
As we're wearing the hat.
Weird.
It just happens to be us. But our business outside of just doing podcast is helping businesses out, kind of business doctors, if you will, diagnosing what's wrong with your business or where you're not seeing growth, and then trying to help you reach new heights. So if that's something you're interested in or want to have a chat, go check us out at stonetableag.com or our Facebook page, Stone Table Advisory Group. And we'd be more than happy to chat with you.
Yeah, check out all the things. You never know what you're going to see that you might like.
Yeah. So with that, servant leadership.
Servant leadership.
So
dear to my heart.
What is that, Josh, that's so dear to your heart?
So let's just pull up the actual definition of servant leadership, and then we'll give our opinions on it. Servant leadership is a leadership philosophy where the leader's primary goal is to serve others, employees, customers, and the community, rather than accumulate power and status.
That was aggressive.
It was. Because that's the way bosses do. It's all about that power. All about that stature.
So that's the definition. But what is servant leadership to you? Like, what does that even mean? Somebody's watching and they go, okay, I hear a definition, but what does that actually look like in practice?
So to me, servant leadership is one, it's putting yourself out front. It's making sure that you're listening, your team is a part of what you do, that you have empathy, you have great listening skills, you're ultimately serving your team. They work and you actually work for them. That's servant leadership, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think it's also, as a leader, rolling up your sleeves, so to speak, unless you wear short sleeves, then maybe
you can roll those up too.
You can wear the tank top, but rolling up your sleeves and kind of getting into the job with your people, not sitting back at the front lines, like you said, kind of leading from the front, doing the job with them. You had kind of said something earlier about making sure that what you do, I think, involves your employees, or I can't remember exactly how you put it, but it's something to that effect, where I think you could even say it the adverse, where everything that your employees do, you're a part of. Right. It's not that they're a part of what you do, but you are very much a part of everything that they do. And that's hard. Servant leadership is not for the faint of heart.
No, and it was actually coined by Robert K. Greenleaf. He said the servant leader
I know that
is
guy.
Do you?
No, I don't.
He was in my kindergarten class. The servant leader is servant first. It begins with natural feeling that one wants to serve first. So it is to me, servant leadership is something you're kind of born with. You can teach that or learn that, but I feel like it's something that's inherently in you already. It's got its own core principles, and empathy being one of those major ones. And I think people that are empathetic have it easier as a servant leader.
To be a servant leader, you kind of have to put yourself aside to do that. Your ego, your pride, your everything you've got to put aside. And if that's not how you are, you can still learn to be a servant leader, but it's just a little bit longer of a road, I think, than somebody who their natural inclination is to put others above themselves, which is really what a servant leader does. If you take all the different definitions of what we said, if you boil it down to just a few quick words, it's putting others above yourself. So but I do think that can be taught to a certain extent. Like we had said before in one of the earlier podcasts about leading versus being a boss, and how some people aren't meant to lead, and that's okay. And teaching somebody to just be a leader, you can kind of do it, but there's something innate in a lot of people to be able to do that. And there's some people that'll tell you, I'd never want to be that. Where I think servant leadership in and of itself, and the definition that I just gave, I think you can demonstrate that and show that for people who maybe not have done that before.
Yeah. And I think you're right there. I do believe it's natural, but I also believe that it is something that can be taught. The journey may be further for others. If you feel like you've listened to some of our podcasts and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a boss, I'm not a leader, it's fixable. It's because, I mean, honestly, as a young leader, I started out as a boss. So you can overcome obstacles in your leadership journey. And learning and reading about servant leadership in my research, and I came across some core principles for servant leadership. Would you like to go over them, Paul?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So empathy, obviously, is one that I've talked about a couple of times now. That's understanding and sharing the feelings of others. So empathy being you understand what somebody's going through. You're aware of your team's livelihood, their trials, their tribulations, their wins, their victories. You kind of understand all that's going on. You know your people. It's very important that you know your people as a servant leader.
I think it's extremely important. Showing empathy for not only who they are as people and maybe what they're going through, but what they do in their daily job. And understanding that job is crucial to success. So a story time with Paul, which tends to happen all the time, I think, on these. When I got my first big time managerial job where I was over multiple people, multiple locations, I remember being super nervous and thinking, how am I going to do this? And the first week, my boss was there for the first day just to tell me all the things about the people that I needed to know that wasn't for empathetic reasons. It was mostly for HR reasons. This person's going to be in HR all the time. This person's this. It's not really good. And then he was gone for a week when I had to be with my team, and it was a job that I had not done before. I decided that day, instead of just sitting in an office and trying to read all the materials I had and go through that, I'm going to go sit in the office with them. I'm going to listen to them in the room, because we were making telephone calls to dealers. I was working in the automotive industry. And then I went and grabbed an open workstation and started doing it myself. Started calling dealers and had them listen to me do it, sitting there with them. And I can remember really vividly, after the first day of me doing that, one of the employees came to me and she said, Paul, every boss we've ever had before you, there's not one that has sat in this room and did the job with us.
Ding, servant leadership.
Yeah. And they said it built instant trust between me and the team. And because they saw me doing it, they know that, I mean, I got a bunch of no's, and I got all the stuff that you get when you're doing rapid fire telemarketing calls, really what we were doing. And they saw me handle the rejection. They know that I know what it's like. It made it that much easier for me to lead them afterwards. But if I hadn't done that and shown empathy for the job that they're doing, I don't think I would have earned that trust. Or if I would have, it would have been a longer road to get there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That is textbook servant leadership right there. And getting to know a new team can be very overwhelming. And that empathy kind of comes into play there, where you're just like, okay, they're probably feeling the same thing I'm feeling because I'm the new manager, and they're wondering, am I going to be a boss? Am I going to be a friend? Am I going to be a tyrant? Am I going to be a no-show? Am I going to never be around? I can never be found. I have no communication skills. So they're thinking the same thing that you're thinking, just on a different scale. Like, you're wondering when you go into it, how they're going to take you, how they're going to react to you. You don't know anybody, so you don't know what kind of skill sets you have yet in your teams. You don't know who has to work on what. So everybody's kind of in limbo as to where they're going and what they're doing at that point. So I think jumping in and you didn't even kind of do a thing. You were just like, hey, I'm right here with you. Let me jump on these calls and kind of see how I do it. Doesn't mean it's the only way.
Hey, can you pull up that quote from Simon Sinek? If you've ever heard him,
Love Simon Sinek quotes.
I mean, yeah, just a wonderful person to watch. But one of the quotes he put was, "True leadership is not about being in control. It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive." And I think it's such a perfect way to say that. And I think empathy is part of that.
It is.
You know, not everybody's going to thrive in the same exact environment. Sometimes even within an office environment, you have to create something different for individuals within the same environment so they can thrive in the way that they can thrive. I know that sounded weird saying it like that, but it's just how it is. People react in different ways, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And everybody's got different skill sets. So in my experience, a lot of it was retail based, merchandising based. And when you have a team of 15 to 20 people, you got a lot of different skill sets. You got a lot of different personalities you're working with. And I had guys that I could send them to demolish something and they could do it in seconds. I could send them to do some critique, really OCD organizational skill stuff, and they were lost. That's just their job.
Sure. Yeah.
They were good. Their skill set was good at taking stuff down or building stuff. They weren't meticulous. There are other people that are, very meticulous about stuff. So you got to figure that out. And in some cases, you got to figure it out quick.
That's where a lot of times leaders can get tripped up or fail. And I think companies a lot of times set up their employees to fail. Sure, there are certain things, certain KPIs, key performance indicators, that you have to hit. If it's something like that, there's certain things you have to hit. But so many times as leaders, we try to pigeonhole all of our teams into this one way of doing it, when just because 1 + 1 = 2 for this person, it may mean that I need to do 3 - 1 = 2 for this other. Maybe I've got to do something completely different and think outside the box, and they'll still get to the same results, but I can't do it the same. And if you don't get to know your people and lead with them, alongside them, you'll never get to that point. Or if you do, it won't be as robust, if you will. It won't include everything that you need to know about a person,
Right,
to help them be the ultimate successful that they can be.
right. And there's a lot of things you come across in the retail world that's interesting when you're on the team that, by the way, if you've ever walked into a store and you thought, I know this was here, that was my team was the one that moved that for you.
Oh, yeah.
So in those cases, there's certain, going back to that skill set thing, if you've ever been in a major chain of retail, you know that there's some sets that have what we call pegboards on them. And so it's hooks of items on it.
Just to be clear, you worked at a home improvement type warehouse, because otherwise pegs and stuff could be literally anything. And so it's just go ahead.
So, and people probably still won't really understand because I'm using probably language that we use all the time at retail. But so those kind of resets are very specific about how you have to do them. And
Yeah.
I've had team members that I could send to do a certain reset and then knock it out, no problem. But you put them on a pegboard and it's like watching them try to read a foreign language or something.
Oh, sure.
Because again, it's a different ball game altogether. So what do? You get down there, you show them. It goes back to the diving in there elbow deep and showing them how it's done, showing them how you do it. You may have to do it more than once. You may have to show them more than once. Not everybody catches things right off the rip. So let's move on to the next principle.
Yeah.
Listening. So truly hearing your team before making decisions. This one to me is kind of hit or miss. You do have, or I've come across team members that will gladly put in their 2 cents, and it's usually that specific person that may be terrible every time. But let them throw in their 2 cents, and you may get an idea out there that you're like, holy crap, I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never thought of that. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think listening is super important. I think in leadership, when you say hit or miss, I think of it in a different direction. Sometimes when you're in a leadership position, you're called to make a decision on something rather quickly, and you can't go in and grab the opinions of others. Now, hopefully you've talked about something coming up or this decision before, but sometimes you just get a directive from on high, not the Lord, but from your boss.
Not the Lord.
Not the Lord. But like from your boss, that's, hey, I need to know what we're going to do with this right now. Or I need you to say yes or no to this or whatever. What direction are we taking this or whatever? And so sometimes you have to make kind of snap decisions. But if you are allowed the time and you need to make a decision, yeah, absolutely. Getting the buy-in from the team and seeing what they think, because the last thing you want to do is go, you know what, I know what's best for my team and I want to do this. Right. I'm going to do this for them. And then you find out that all of them would have picked this instead of this that you chose. And now they're all mad at you because you could have, it's anytime we can get feedback on anything, I highly recommend you get feedback. Who cares? That's where the ego goes. Like get the ego out. When you are making decisions for your teams as a leader, as a servant leader, finding out what they want and then saying, okay, I get it. Here's why that's not a good idea. Or here's why, wow, let me really look into that can be really beneficial.
Yeah. To be clear on that, the part right there you said at the end where you were like, let me show you why that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Let me show you how that's not a good idea. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with listening. You don't have to accept every single idea, obviously. And if you can point out the key points to why it's not going to work, then listen and then point that out. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very good.
Plus when you ask employees their opinions, you're empowering that employee to have a voice. How many times in our companies do employees say, I don't have a voice in this company? My boss does whatever they want to. I just get shut down. Employees having a voice is one of the most critical things you can do as a leader, is giving your people a space to voice what their opinions are.
And statistically, it's more important than the money they get paid to them. It's being important and being a part of something. All right. Number 3, I'll let you guess.
Circus peanuts.
It just so number 3 is circus peanuts. You want to make sure that you bring as many circus peanuts as possible because they're delicious. I love you don't like circus peanuts?
I don't like peanuts, man. Peanut butter.
They're not real. They're not real peanuts. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's real digestible.
I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's. Oh yeah, you're talking about.
They're little orange. Yeah, that's what a circus peanut.
That ain't food, man.
That's giant.
That is edible foam.
But it's so good. I will eat that foam. All right. So number 3 is awareness, being conscious of yourself and your impact. I love that part. Your impact.
What does that mean?
So you have to understand what the decisions that you make, what they do to your team, in my opinion, or what they do for your job and your team's success. Since we're talking about servant leadership, if you're out in the front and you're leading your team and you're not taking credit for what gets done, you're putting your team first when it comes to credit. So you're out in front while you're working, you're out in the back when the credit's given. I think your impact is huge. One, it's your impact on your turnover rates. It's your impact on your team's morale. It's your impact on your KPIs, your loss prevention, your all that shrink, all that stuff. You have to understand what you and your team are impacting when you do your job. You have to be aware of that.
Yeah. And I know, Josh, you spent some time as an HR manager. And so I think what I'm about to say here, you can probably say yes to here, and I want to hear some more about how it relates when you were in HR. But, employees, when they're given feedback, when they're giving accolades, when they are being told how good of a job they're doing, or at least told, hey, let's work on this or that, the employee tends to be happier when they get feedback at all, right? And hopefully it's positive, but or when they work really hard. And so many times, and we talked about it in earlier episodes, but so many times an employee will work really hard at something and the boss will sweep in and go, this is great work, and then present it as their own, or say, hey, this is what I did, right? Or this is what the whole team did, when maybe it was one individual. Where I really feel, as a servant leader, it's important to call out individual performances, individual contributions when warranted, and to make sure that credit goes where credit's due,
Right.
And I know in HR you had to have seen that many times.
So many times. So for the HR side of it, when employees feel like they're important and they've been made, or they've been empowered or they've been impactful, one, you can keep that employee long term. Your turnover rate, shoots way down. And that's important. Like from an HR standpoint, the amount of time that it goes into training new employees is time consuming, it's expensive. And if you've got an employee that just needed a little encouragement, even if it's negative, even if it's like a performance review or something like that, you can do things like that and put a positive spin on it. And you may get something, you may get the best employee you've ever had. You may find your next leader in your company. A guy that was struggling with his commitment to his job
Yeah.
finally becomes, or gal, becomes important. And now
Hmm.
you're seeing the superstar come out because they feel valued and the
Yeah.
importance of that value.
100%. I think they realize there's a personal responsibility they have once they're given feedback, and they hear that feedback's actually been taken in, or the efforts that they have been rewarded or at least seen. When it makes them work hard, now they've got more skin in the game. They're more committed to what the vision of the leader is and what they're trying to do. And you see that over and over again. And you hear the old cliche that employees don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses.
Right.
Now I think people still leave bad companies all the time.
Right. Right.
Even if you have a great boss, the company may be terrible, and you may be like, I'm out of here because my boss is great, but they ain't paying me crap. But at the same time, to your point of turnover and everything else, when you're open with your people, when you're giving feedback, when you're praising them, even in the small things, there's a loyalty that's built up, and that turnover rate starts to drop pretty rapidly. And then turnover is not as big. You may be in a high turnover place, and it's just because of the kind of job it is.
Right.
But turnover rates, definitely get a whole lot better whenever you're engaged with employees like that.
But see, I'm a firm believer in, they say that there's jobs out there that the turnover rate is just always going to be high. There has to be a reason. And I can't jump in there and be like, I know the reason, this is why. But I can't believe that if you've got certain qualities in check in your company, that your turnover rate would be high. I just don't. It may be high compared to some kind of long term, government job or something like that, where the payout's good on the end and you get great benefits and stuff like that. A lot of people like that kind of stuff, but it still doesn't mean it has to be like, well, that's just this job. It's just a high turnover rate. Well, maybe there's a way to fix that. Maybe there's a way to change. I don't know. I that's just my opinion on that.
So I agree with you. I agree with you completely. I think you can change people's mindsets by how you treat them. Case in point, in one of my last, in a position I had with a former company, I was over these inspectors. So we inspected cars at an auction. There's, I don't know, 400 of them or something like that across the country. And when I really started to be more of the leader and take over the division, we had a really big issue with the view of what people thought of our inspectors. They were treated as like third class citizens. Hey, you're out there doing a menial job. Nobody cares. Just do your job and let the sales teams take over, right? They always felt like they weren't appreciated.
Just the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. And so we worked really hard at trying to instill the importance of it, the importance of what they do. Me and the regionals that worked under me talk consistently about them being actually the most important because it was the first thing that we did at an auction, all this stuff, to where before our turnover rate was stupid high. I couldn't tell you what it was. It was really high, really, really high. We lost people all the time, to where there at the end, our turnover rate was, I mean, we had dropped it at least in half, if not more, because people actually felt good about coming. They felt like their job was important. You know, you had general managers coming out to these guys and saying, hey, thank you for what you're doing, where they never even knew their names before in some cases. And it made a huge impact on these guys just for saying hi.
Yeah.
And showing how much they appreciate them working, you know. So that kind of stuff goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if you can fix your turnover rate, if you're going to fix your turnover rate, it's going to be through servant leadership. I honestly believe that if you turn into a servant leader, your turnover rate will tank in a good way.
Yeah, it's weird to say that, right?
Yeah, and like I challenge anybody. You go through servant leadership and you stick it out. You know, you learn it. You learn how to do it. You understand what it takes, and you really start treating your people with that servant mentality. I guarantee you your turnover rate's going to be fantastic. All right. Number 4, foresight. I always say number 4 like that, by the way. Seeing the potential outcomes of actions and decisions.
Number 4.
Number 4. I didn't do it every
like
time.
Like Christopher Walken? I like your Christopher Walken interview.
Number 4. I got a fever.
Oh,
foresight,
more cowbell.
Seeing the potential outcomes of actions and decisions. I think this one's pretty important too. You need to understand the long-term and short-term of decisions that you make and the things that you do as a servant leader.
Every decision has a consequence. Consequences can be, consequence sounds like such a negative word, but it doesn't always have to be. The consequences make a decision could be a positive thing. True. It's just the effect, I guess you could say. Maybe I should say the effects. Always has an effect. But yeah, if you're not thinking of your people, I'm going to make this decision, but I know that if I do this, it's going to actually hurt these people here. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. You're probably setting yourself up for failure. Now, there are some decisions that you have to make that are really tough. As leaders, you have to make tough decisions all the time, and decisions that don't always help everybody, right? There's decisions that once they're enacted, it might help some, it might help the majority. It may only help one person, and it may hurt everybody else. But it's a decision that has to be made for various reasons. But what's important is when you have those coming up and you have a decision, for me, it's always, I want to go talk to my team about, I've got this decision make. If I go this way, here's what it's going to do. And then they can come up with their conclusions on what it means for them. Or I bring them in separately, individually, and tell them. Or if I make this, here's how it's going to benefit you. I think as a servant leader, it's important to be truthful with your team about the possibilities of whatever your decision you're making or whatever's going on. You don't need to sugarcoat everything and make sure they know all the good, happy, fun times that are going to happen. None of the negative. Like, it's just as important to say both sides and keep a balance on what's happening, so they're fully aware of what's going into the decision.
Right. And I think in that foresight, you also have the, how do you give negative news? How do you give, they're making some changes and it's, deep down, you don't like it and your team's not going to like it. It's really going to affect them. But your foresight can help you with how you're going to project that news to your team and how it's going to affect them long term. If you come into it with this negative, super negative mindset, like this is the dumbest decision this company's ever made, I hate this, be mad at them, not me. Well, that's one of those things you kind of signed up for. And if you spoon feed your team just negative energy like that, then guess what your conclusion is going to be? A lot of angry people that may not be angry with you, but they're going to be angry at your company that you're working for. And now they've stopped really committing to the programs. So, that's, to me, that's what the foresight part of it is understanding that how you make that decision and how you project that decision, how that's going to go down the road and what it's going to cause.
Yeah, agreed. Again, I don't think it's, if you're out there listening and you're trying to figure out how to lead people, I don't think it's, like you said, focusing wholly on the negative or really being a company cheerleader and going, hey guys, this is a
Yeah.
great thing, when it's
Oh,
not.
yeah.
Be honest. Like, I've been in plenty of situations where something's been told, hey, we're making the changes. It was no decision on my part. Like, it just was, these changes were being made and here's how they affect your team. And I go, man, I don't like any of this. And I'll tell my team, guys, here's this that's come down. This is what it means. I know it's not the greatest news, but we're going to work together and figure out how we can make it into something great.
There you go.
You know, it's important, I think, to be honest with them and not, so many people just turn into these company cheerleaders that don't believe out one side of their mouth. They're saying, this is the stupidest thing ever. And then when they're in front of their employees, are going, this is the greatest thing ever. And you guys should be so happy. The company loves you so much by taking your pay away. Like, be honest. Be honest. Right.
Be very honest and upfront, and you don't have to like it. You know, you can be
Yeah.
like, look, this decision is going to be tough. It's going to be hard for us, but our team will get through it. That's what we do. We push and we power through. If
100%.
if there's a team out there that's going to solve this problem and kill this, it's going to be us. We're the ones that are going to do it. It's not going to affect us. We're moving on. All right. Number 5, stewardship, managing resources and responsibilities on behalf of others. I like stewardship.
You want to expand?
So for me, the stewardship side of it is more of the, I guess, technical, maybe the paperwork side of it. Your stewardship, you want to make sure, you know, any changes that are coming up in the company, say benefit enrollment. Hey, your vacations, your vacation's going to, at the end of the year, you're going to lose it. Make sure you're taking it. You need to be looking at that. We're getting towards the end of the year. Things like that, staying ahead of them is your stewardship side of it. You know, that nothing's worse than being that employee that's like, oh man, I can't wait for, open enrollment sign up. And then it gets here and there was no reminders. You didn't tell them, you weren't looking out for them. You didn't care. And next thing you know, they've got to go a whole nother year without being able to sign up for insurance because you dropped the ball on being a good steward for your people.
Yep. And it doesn't even matter if there's emails that get sent out or text messages or anything like that.
No.
If you are a leader of a team, that kind of stuff, yeah, you need to be open with that as soon as you possibly can. Any resource related thing, any information you receive that would be beneficial for the employee to know. Right. And I think that's a key kind of differentiator, because there are sometimes we get information as employees, if you're a leader in a business, that you'll get information that's not really beneficial for anybody to hear. You hear it, and if you say anything, it could be gossip or it could be, oh, hey, this might happen in the future, but we don't know. And sometimes you can really stir people up in a negative way with some of that stuff. So you have to be really careful. But the things that you need to get out, benefits, like you said, changes to pay,
yearly evaluations. Don't miss
yearly
somebody's evaluation. That affects their raise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't pencil whip one the last day or the day after and be like, oh, I got it in. Put thought and process. Being a good steward is putting thought and care into, an evaluation or their benefits, their families, that's their livelihood. So don't be that leader that's like, oh crap, I forgot that.
Well, and I'll tell you what, if you pencil whip performance review, your employee knows.
Oh, yeah.
You sit down and do that performance review, they'll know that you just literally put it together a few minutes before, and they won't even listen to anything you say at that point.
My whole evaluation is from something that happened yesterday, like all of it. Yeah. Oh, I know. I banked that on your whole year, buddy.
I've seen that.
I've been a model employee all year long, and yesterday I missed work, and that's all you talked about. Good boss. All right, number 6, commitment to the growth of people. Oh, I love this one.
Okay, I thought we were on number 7. 6, 7, it's a number. Let's just keep going.
We call it 7. Number 7, commitment to the growth of people. Helping others develop professionally and personally. I love this one because one of my biggest speeches when I get a new team is I want them to know, toot my horn, is I want my team to know and understand that whatever they decide to do, whether it be with this company that I'm working with right now, or if your goal is to move on to something different, bigger, better, greater, not greater, doesn't matter. I want to help you do that.
Mm.
Like, my goal is not just to crutch you and leave you here. And if you don't want to be here, then I'm not investing time in you. You can do whatever it is you're going to do.
Oh.
No, invest time. If you invest time in them outside of, if they're wanting to be, I don't know, an actor, if they want to be a TikTok star, if they want to be the writer, if they're wanting to be in management, you should be helping them every step of the way that you can, in my opinion, even if it's to get out of the company.
You know, I agree. You do that you really do that for good employees that are difficult and try to make the job hard or are frustrating for everybody to be around. You don't really do that as much because you're really trying to find a way for them to exit, to be completely honest, right? You're like, oh yeah, please leave. I don't want you anymore. Please do something so bad I can fire you. This would be wonderful, but I could not agree with you more on that. I've had so many conversations with people over the years that have been employees of mine that I've told them that exact thing. Hey, let's talk about career growth. Let's talk about career path and what do you want to do? And if we're going through stuff and there's something in the company you want to go for, cool. I'll help you figure out how to get there. I'll put you in the way of people. I'll put you in the way of systems or technology you need to know. All that stuff I'll do. If you tell me, the more I've been here, the more I don't really want to do this with my life, the more I actually want to do this instead, insert random job here. I'm going to tell them, great. Well, let's figure out what skills you need to get there that you can utilize in the job you're doing now, but would benefit you in that job. Like,
Right.
The important thing for me as a leader is for people to succeed. A lot of companies would say, no, they should always just succeed in our job, but jobs can come and go. Really, you just want them to succeed in life and whatever's going to make them happy. And of course, you want it to be at the place you're working. But if it's not, that's okay. Let's foster that and build people up and say, go for it. And I'll help you. I'll write you a recommendation. I'll write it right now and I'll give it to you. Write a heartfelt recommendation. I've had plenty of those I've been asked to do or I've offered to do that they've said, yes, please do it. Like, it's so important to let people know you support them. And it's not just because you're a boss and you're trying to get them to do well so they make money for you.
Right.
It's not that, who cares about all that? Put that all aside. It's about the individual, right? And them finding success and them finding happiness. And I know for me, that's what drives me. And I know it does the same for you.
It does. It does. And I think most people around the world, if they feel like somebody's investing in them, whether it be inside, outside, work, that doesn't matter to me. I think if they feel like they're being invested in, then you've just gained a model employee. You're going to see that if they're happy with things that are going on, their productivity is just going to shoot up.
Agreed.
I mean, obviously, let's say, Jonathan Gableson. If that's somebody's real name, I'm sorry, I don't know you. I've never known a Jonathan Gableson.
I've never even heard that last name, but I'm sure somebody has it.
Yep. Jonathan
just
Gableson.
Our luck they're watching this.
There we go. Jonathan Gableson wants to be a writer, right? Obviously, you can't be like, hey, man, take 4 hours out of this 8-hour day and just go back to the break room, just write all day.
Yeah,
you're champ.
Yeah,
I'm for you. Yeah, obviously you can't do that, right? But you can be there for them when they need you for something. Really hope and push for their goals. Let them dream and push for them to dream harder. That's and there's probably one of my biggest flaws is that I hold on to the hope of an employee changing longer than I should. In those cases you were talking about, you have good ones that you want to help out and you have ones that you don't want to. And that's an old habit that dies hard from my years as a counselor for kids, is the ones that are having it tough and that lash out and that have the hardest time. You don't know what their background is. You don't know where they're coming from. And if you don't step up and help that person who is, and I take that mentality probably into adulthood with adults, and you shouldn't, you really shouldn't, honestly. I mean, you should try to help where you can, obviously, but
yeah, you don't want to overstep your bounds.
Right. And
of course,
you hold on to a bad employee too long, and now you're affecting your team, you're affecting the team's morale and stuff like that. So that's, we talk about us having flaws too. That's probably one of my flaws is, I want to help that person get through whatever that is. All right. Number 2, last one. Building community, creating a sense of belonging and shared purpose. This is actually number 7, but
or 8 or 6 or 35. We don't even know anymore. I've lost count.
So building a community. Why is that important?
Oh man, I am such a big proponent of community. And I'm taking it out of the business setting for now and just talking about as humans, we are made to be in community with other people.
Yes.
I know there's people out there that go, man, I love going home by myself. I love curling up to a book or a movie or a show and not having to deal with anybody. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of introverts out there, which I'm one of them, that, I don't like to go out and be around a bunch of people all the time. Like that drains me. I'll do it, but it's not what I prefer. But there's just something about being with a group of people that know you, that hold space for you, that see you, right, in your good times and your bad times, and are still there for you through all of it, that empowers you to be the best version of yourself.
I agree with that. Your community is so important. I think maybe in the first episode, maybe the second episode, we talked about getting through trials in life. How do we get through them? How do we get through those hard times? And I don't know if I used the word community, but community is what got me through some of my darker times. And that's, you're right. It's so important. That's outside of work. Inside of work, there's a community. You have peers, you have people that you reach out to, that you stay in touch with and stuff like that. That's very important. And I think in this sense of, a servant leader, the community is your team and they want to feel like they have a place on that team. And that's very important.
Yeah, I think you hear people all the time as we're getting close to wrapping up today, but I think you hear people all the time where they're talking about a company and they'll go, oh, we're more like family than we are employees. And well, some of that can be very gimmicky, I think, and not real. There's a lot of truth to that. And as a servant leader, as a leader, you can foster that kind of atmosphere, right? You can foster a team where they feel like they are part of a family, if you will, that everybody's there. They all know what their roles are. They all have support. And that really starts from the leader. A team can do that, but if the leader is against it or the leader's not involved, there becomes this separation, between the team and the leader. And then that's where trust breaks down and respect breaks down and all these other things. But as a leader, you can foster that community and make the workplace a place where people want to be, amongst people they want to be around.
Yeah, whether the personalities are the same or not, you have very important roles that can fit and mesh together, I think.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that wraps it up, I guess.
Yeah, there's so much to servant leadership and especially community that you said at the end that I feel like we could talk for a long time on. I know I could.
Well, let's continue on. We'll just do another hour or so. It's fine.
Yeah. No, but what we could do is we'll probably in our next episode at least start with that and talk some more about servant leadership because I think it's something that is so needed in the world today.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea. We can push it less. Let's push it less business. Push it more personal. Let's get to the personal side of it. Let's get deep.
Man, there you are, aggressive again.
Yeah.
Like passion. Aggressive at the start. No, is that what it is? It's passion. More passion. Have you ever seen that? More passion. I don't think that's all they say is, oh, more energy. That's right.
All right. So join us next time as we talk about more servant leadership on a passionate, deeper meaning level. So in order to sign off, I will leave you with this. We're out of here like a cat at bath time. Actually, I have a story about this. A cat at bath time. So let me throw this out there for you real quick.
Every time.
Give you an emphasis on cat at bath time. So at a young age, I thought it would be a great idea to bathe a cat that was constant. It was normally just an outside cat, never came inside. So most people would say feral. I'd give them that. So, but it was ours.
It was a bobcat.
Yeah, no, it was anything but that. The cat's name was Tiny, and I don't mean like Little John Tiny. Like it was named Tiny because it was tiny.
It was tiny.
When
So
I tell
an appropriate
you,
name.
this cat was, its inner life was a mountain lion. It was. As soon as that cat realized I was going to put it in a vat of water.
A vat?
Yeah, I say
You
vat.
had vats?
It was a tub. It was a tub of
I was
water.
about to say, where do you live?
So
you
I
live
thought,
in freaking
you're
Transylvania?
filthy. You got
Vat.
fleas. I got this. I'm going to help you out. I went to dip that cat into that water, and as soon as a toe touched water, it became like the Incredible Hulk of cats. When I tell you a cat can move in ways that are not possible, like alien style, I thought I had a good hold on this cat, that it could not get to me, but it did. It did. I was bleeding from so many areas of my body.
Oh my God.
Because this cat turned into like a gymnast with knives.
Oh, that's funny.
Well,
and scary at the same time.
And I'll tell you, I did not bathe that cat. That cat did not get clean. It stayed filthy and it went right back outside because I wanted it to come inside as a small child. So we're out faster than a cat at bath time.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Every time, man. She can't do that. She can't be making weird freako noises and then expect me to be serious right after you do it.
Welcome to the podcast.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Whoa. I'm just making sure you're ready.
I am ready.
Okay.